History tells us that Japan was saved by a miracle, twice. The Kamikaze, a divine wind that rose from the sea and smashed the Mongol fleet to splinters just as they were about to win. It's a great story. It makes for amazing art, but it's mostly a lie. While the storms did happen, they didn't save Japan. Japan saved itself. Years before the first sail appeared on the horizon, the samurai had already turned their coastline into a tactical meat grinder. To understand how the world's greatest land army failed to take a few islands, we have to look past the myths. We have to look at the massive wall that changed naval warfare, the terrifying flaw in the Mongol war machine, and the reason why the Khan's greatest weapon, his sheer numbers, became his biggest liability. By 1274, Kublai Khan was the undisputed master of the world. He had finished what his grandfather Genghis started, conquering the Song dynasty and bringing all of China under his heel. But the King of Kings had a problem: Japan. To the Mongols, Japan was a rude little collection of islands that refused to pay tribute. Kublai sent 6 separate delegations of envoys demanding submission. The Japanese response? They ignored the first 5. When the 6th arrived, the Hojo regions, the real power behind the shogun, cut the envoys' heads off. This wasn't just an insult, it was a challenge to the Mongol world order. Kublai didn't just want Japan, he wanted to make an example of them. But there was a catch. The Mongols were masters of the steppe, not the sea. To invade Japan, they had to build an empire on the water from scratch. They forced Korean shipbuilders to construct 900 vessels in just 6 months, a timeline that would haunt them later. When the first Mongol fleet arrived at Tsushima Island, the samurai were in for a brutal shock. Japanese warfare at the time was highly ritualized. A samurai would ride out, announce his lineage, and look for a worthy opponent for a one-on-one duel. The Mongols? They just laughed. They fought as a single coordinated machine. While the samurai were looking for glory, the Mongols were looking for a kill count. They used the whistling arrow to signal mass maneuvers, and for the first time in Japanese history, the samurai encountered tetsuhao, porcelain bombs filled with gunpowder and scrap metal. The noise alone terrified the Japanese horses. The samurai were forced to retreat inland, realizing that if they fought the Mongols on an open field, Japan would fall in weeks. The first invasion ended when a small storm forced the Mongols to retreat to their ships. The samurai didn't cheer, they panicked. They knew the Khan would be back, and they knew they couldn't win a fair fight. So they did something radical. They didn't wait for the next divine intervention, they started digging. For 7 years they built the Genko Bori, a 20-kilometer stone barrier 2 meters high, lining the entire coast of Hakata Bay. When the Mongols returned in 1281 with the largest naval armada in human history, 140,000 men on 4,000 ships, they expected an open beach. Instead, they found a fortress. The Mongol cavalry, the most feared weapon in the world, couldn't get their horses over the wall. They were stuck on the narrow strip of sand between the water and the stone, under a constant rhythmic hail of Japanese arrows. The wall turned the open field of the beach into a corridor of death. This is where the war machine began to snap. You see, the Mongols weren't shipbuilders. They forced their conquered subjects, the Chinese and Koreans, to build their fleet. In a rush to meet Kublai Khan's impossible deadlines, the builders used flat-bottomed riverboats instead of deep-keeled ocean vessels. A flat-bottomed boat is great for the calm Yangtze River. It's a disaster in the choppy, unpredictable Tsushima Strait. These ships were stable only when the water was like glass. The moment the waves picked up, these floating coffins began to groan and leak. Worse yet, archaeology has recently discovered that many of these ships were made of green, unseasoned wood, a recipe for structural collapse. Because they couldn't breach the wall, the Mongols stayed on their ships at night to rest. This was their third fatal mistake. The samurai were masters of the small boat raid. Under the cover of darkness, small groups of Japanese warriors would row out to the massive Mongol ships. They would set them on fire, decapitate the officers, and vanish. Imagine the psychological toll. You're trapped in a cramped, rotting ship in the summer heat. Your supplies are running out, and every night, silent killers climb over your railings. By the time the famous Kamikaze storm actually hit in August 1281, the Mongol army was already broken, diseased, and demoralized. The storm didn't defeat a mighty army. It swept away a graveyard. So, if the wall and the logistics won the war, why does everyone credit the wind? The answer is politics. The samurai who fought at the wall wanted to be paid. But because this was a defensive war, there was no loot or land to take from the defeated Mongols. The shogunate was broke. By telling the people that a god saved Japan, the government could shift the credit away from the soldiers they couldn't afford to pay. It was a PR campaign that lasted 700 years. The Mongols didn't lose because they were weak. They lost because they tried to fight a steppe war on the ocean against an enemy that had spent 7 years studying their every move. Japan didn't survive because of a miracle. It survived because it turned its very geography into a weapon. But Japan wasn't the only country to humble the Khan. In the jungles of Southeast Asia, another nation was about to give the Mongols an even bloodier lesson in asymmetrical warfare. If you want to see how a much smaller force used the power of the tides to destroy the Mongol navy for good, subscribe and watch our breakdown of the Battle of Bac Dang in Vietnam.